The air in the hospital room was thick with the scent of new life, that sweet, indescribable smell of 7 baby girls, my 7 miracles. I was exhausted, my body a battlefield of aches and stitches, but my heart was overflowing. Through the glass of the nursery window, I could see them, 7 perfect little bundles, each with a tiny pink hat, their chests rising and falling in the gentle rhythm of sleep. I had done it. We had done it. NMY husband, Liam, stood beside me. I reached for his hand, wanting to share this perfect, sacred moment. But his hand was cold, unresponsive. He wasn't looking at our daughters. He was looking at the door. "Liam?" I whispered, a thread of unease weaving through my joy. "Aren't they beautiful?" NHE finally turned to look at me, but his eyes were empty. The warmth I had known for years was gone, replaced by a chilling, distant pity. "I have to go, Chloe," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "And go? Go where?" I asked, confused. "We just had 7 babies. Our family is finally here." Nassif on cue, the door to the room opened. A woman stood there. She was beautiful, with sleek, dark hair and a tailored suit that seemed out of place in the maternity ward. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on Liam. She held up a set of car keys, a silent summons, NMY world tilted on its axis. Who is that?" I stammered, my voice trembling. NLIAM pulled his hand from mine and straightened his jacket. He walked towards her, towards the door, away from me and our 7 newborn daughters. He paused at the threshold and looked back at me, his face a mask of regret, but not for what he was doing. "Her name is Isabel," he said, as if that explained everything. "She can give me the life I need, the one you can't." And then he was gone. He walked out of the hospital, out of my life, with another woman on the very day our 7 daughters were born. The weight of my wedding ring on my finger suddenly felt immense, a cold, heavy shackle. The tears that finally streamed down my face were hot, but the gold on my hand was colder. In that moment, I realized my marriage hadn't just ended. It had been an illusion all along. This is the story of how the man I loved shattered my world in the most brutal way imaginable, and how I used the broken pieces to build an empire for my daughters and serve him the justice he never saw coming. If you believe in the power of a woman to rise from the ashes, hit that like button and subscribe. Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. Now, let's go back to the beginning of his great deception. And the perfect Liam, Liam, and I were the perfect couple. That's what everyone said. We met in college. He was the charismatic, ambitious business major who dreamed of building empires, and I was the idealistic art student who dreamed of painting them. He was the solid ground to my drifting clouds. He pursued me with a gentle, unwavering patience that felt like coming home. He made me believe that my dreams were his dreams too. "One day, Chloe," he'd say, holding me under the stars, "we'll have a big, chaotic house, full of kids, full of your paintings, a masterpiece of a life." I believed him. I fell in love not just with him, but with the beautiful future he painted for us. NHI's family owned a modest but respected manufacturing company. Liam was determined to transform it into a global powerhouse. I was his biggest cheerleader. I put my own artistic ambitions on hold to support him. I hosted dinners for potential investors. I networked at his side. I was the gracious, supportive wife every rising CEO needed. I saw it as my contribution to our dream. I didn't realize I was just another asset in his business plan. NTHE first few years of our marriage were a blur of his rising success. The company grew. Our wealth expanded, and we moved into a beautiful home. But the big, chaotic family he had promised was slow to arrive. We struggled with infertility for years. Each negative pregnancy test was a quiet heartbreak, but Liam was always there to hold me, to reassure me. "It's okay, my love," he'd say, his voice soft. "We're a team. We'll get through this." NHI's comfort was a perfect performance. I now know that during those years, while I was injecting myself with hormones and crying over my perceived failures, he was already living a double life. He had already met Isabel. She was a high-powered corporate lawyer he'd hired to handle his international expansions. She was everything I wasn't: sharp, ruthless, and completely immersed in his world of ambition and power. She was his partner in business, and, in secret, his partner in life. He didn't leave me then because he needed me. He needed my family's name, my social grace, and the image of a stable, loving marriage to secure the conservative, old-money investors he was courting. I was the perfect cover. And he needed an heir, the final piece of his perfect public image. And when we finally had success with IVF and the doctor announced I was carrying septuplets, Liam's reaction was one of overwhelming joy. He wept, holding me in his arms. "Our family, Chloe," he whispered into my hair. "It's finally happening." It was the performance of a lifetime. I thought his tears were for us. I now know they were tears of relief. His plan was almost complete. The last piece of the puzzle, the children for his public legacy, was falling into place. He had his heir 7 times over, and he had his real partner waiting in the wings. I was just the vessel, and my service was about to expire. And the final act, NTHE pregnancy, was incredibly difficult, a high-risk journey from start to finish. I was put on bed rest for the last 4 months, a prisoner in our beautiful home. Liam played the part of the doting husband flawlessly. He brought me meals on a tray, read to me for hours, and massaged my swollen feet. He would rest his head on my enormous belly and talk to our unborn daughters, his voice full of love and promises. And it was all a lie, a meticulously crafted, soul-crushingly cruel lie. Now I know that when he left my room for late-night meetings at the office, he was going to her. When he was on business trips, securing funding, he was building a future with Isabel. They were buying a house in another city, furnishing it, creating the life he truly wanted, while I lay in bed, growing his children, believing we were building that life together. NHE used my pregnancy as the perfect excuse to keep his world separate. No one questioned his long hours or his frequent travel. He was a devoted husband preparing for the arrival of 7 children. He was a hero, a man stepping up to an immense responsibility. The sympathy and admiration he received from our friends and family were a shield that made his deception impenetrable. NMY friends would visit, telling me how lucky I was. "Liam is a saint," they'd say. "Most men would be terrified, but he's so calm, so supportive." I would smile, my heart swelling with pride. I was so blind, so wrapped up in the beautiful fiction he had woven. Looking back, the signs were there, small and subtle. A new, expensive watch, he claimed, was a gift from an investor. The scent of a perfume that wasn't mine, clinging faintly to his suit jacket. His phone, which was suddenly always angled away from me. I dismissed it all. Trust was the foundation of our love, and I refused to believe it could be cracked. My love for him made me a fool. NTHE, day I went into labor. He was the image of a concerned father-to-be. He held my hand, he coached my breathing, he whispered words of encouragement. He was there when our 7 daughters were born, one after another, their tiny cries filling the room. He even shed a tear as he cut the first umbilical cord. As I was being moved to the recovery room, exhausted but euphoric, he leaned in and kissed my forehead. "You did it, Chloe," he said. "I'm so proud of you. I'll be right back." He was going to make some calls, he said, to share our wonderful news. NHE was making a call, but not to our family. He was calling her. He was telling her the final condition of their plan had been met. The heirs had been born. The show was over. It was time for the final act. And I, the star of the show, had no idea the curtain was about to fall on my entire life. The exit NTHE hour after the birth was a golden, hazy dream. The nurses brought me food, and my parents called, their voices weeping with joy. I was floating on a cloud of relief and overwhelming love. I kept looking at the door, expecting Liam to walk back in at any moment, his face beaming. I imagined us standing together at the nursery window, choosing names, planning the rest of our lives. When he finally appeared, the dream shattered. The joy on his face was gone, replaced by a calm, resolute emptiness that terrified me. And he wasn't alone. The woman, Isabel, was with him, standing just behind him in the hallway. NMY first thought was that she was a lawyer, that something was wrong with the business. "Liam? What is it? What's happened?" I asked, pushing myself up in the bed. "Nothing has happened, Chloe," he said, stepping into the room. Isabel remained in the doorway, a silent, sentinel-like figure. "Everything has gone according to plan." NTHE, way he said plan, sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't our plan, it was his. That's when he told me. He didn't shout, he didn't apologize. He spoke with the detached clarity of a CEO dissolving a partnership. He told me about Isabel, about their years-long relationship, about their shared ambition. He told me he had loved me once, but that we had grown into different people. He needed a partner who could challenge him, who could operate on his level. "And the children?" I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. "Our daughters? They will be well taken care of," he said, as if discussing a financial settlement. "I've set up a trust. They will want for nothing." Materially, NTHE word, materially, hung in the air, a confession of his own emotional bankruptcy. He wasn't just leaving me, he was leaving them. 7 newborn babies, not even a day old, and their father was walking away because they were part of a life he no longer wanted to pretend to live. NTHE final, brutal blow, was when he walked to the small table beside my bed. He picked up the little card where I had started to scribble name ideas. He glanced at it, his expression unreadable. Then he set it back down, next to the vase of flowers he had sent me that morning. It was a gesture of such profound indifference, it felt more violent than a slap. NHE walked to the door where Isabel was waiting. He didn't look back. He just walked out. NTHE silence he left behind was deafening. I looked at my hands, at the wedding ring he had placed on my finger years ago with promises of forever. It felt like a piece of ice, burning my skin. The tears came then, hot and silent, a river of grief for a love that had never been real, for a future that had been stolen from me, and for my 7 daughters, who had been orphaned by their own father on the day of their birth. The pain was a physical thing, a gaping wound in my chest. But as I sat there, drowning in it, a tiny hard spark of something else ignited in the darkness. It was rage, and it would be the thing that saved me. The ghost in the machine NTHE weeks that followed were a blur of grief and logistics. Liam was a ghost. He communicated only through his lawyers, his messages cold and clinical. A generous financial settlement was offered, a trust fund for the girls so large it was obscene. It was hush money. It was his attempt to pay for his sins, to absolve himself with cash so he could walk away clean. I refused to touch a penny of it. NMY parents were my saviors. They moved in with me, helping with the relentless cycle of feeding, changing, and soothing 7 infants. My father, a quiet man of immense integrity, was consumed by a cold fury. My mother, heartbroken for me, channeled her energy into caring for her granddaughters. Their love was the scaffolding that held me up as my world was being rebuilt. NLIAM and Isabel vanished. They moved to another country, launching a new, even more ambitious global venture. They were celebrated in financial magazines, the new power couple, their story carefully curated to erase me and my children completely. To the world, it was as if we never existed. NHE thought his money had bought my silence. He thought I would crumble, that I would be so overwhelmed by the task of raising 7 children alone that I would have no energy left to fight. He underestimated me. He had always seen me as the soft, gentle artist. He never understood that the same passion I poured into my paintings could be poured into a quest for justice. NMY war began in the quiet hours of the night, sitting at my kitchen table with a laptop, surrounded by sleeping baby monitors. I was a ghost in his old machine. He had left behind years of shared accounts, old laptops, and digital footprints. He was so arrogant, so sure of his clean getaway, that he hadn't been as thorough as he thought. I started digging. I taught myself about forensic accounting, about tracing digital trails. I reactivated my art career, not just for my soul, but for a cover. I began selling paintings, traveling to small art fairs. These trips were my chance to meet people without raising suspicion. I hired a private investigator, a discreet woman who specialized in complex international financial cases. NMY's goal wasn't to get more money, it was to take his away. All of it. Liam's entire empire was built on a carefully constructed image of stability, tradition, and family values. He had used my name, my social standing, and the birth of his children to secure the trust of his most important investors. I decided to burn that image to the ground. I began to compile a dossier. It included the timeline of his affair, sworn affidavits from friends who he had lied to, and financial records showing how he had used company funds for his life with Isabel. The most powerful weapon, however, was the story itself. The story of a man who abandoned his wife and 7 newborn daughters on the day they were born. It was a story so monstrous, so morally bankrupt, that it would be radioactive to any investor who heard it. I was no longer the grieving wife. I was a saboteur, patiently planting charges at the foundation of the empire he loved more than any human being. The whispering campaign, direct attack, would have been dismissed as the ramblings of a bitter ex-wife. Liam's lawyers would have buried me. My strategy had to be subtle, a campaign of whispers that would grow into a roar. I targeted the one thing Liam valued more than money, his reputation. NMY's first target was a man named Arthur Kensington, the patriarch of the family of investors Liam had worked so hard to win over. Arthur was an old-school traditionalist, a man for whom family honor and legacy were everything. He had been charmed by Liam and our perfect family. He was the cornerstone of Liam's financial backing. I didn't approach him directly. I used my father. My father requested a meeting with Arthur, not as an accuser, but as a heartbroken old friend. He told Arthur the story, his voice heavy with sorrow. He didn't ask for anything. He simply laid out the truth of Liam's betrayal, framing it as a tragedy that had befallen our family. He presented a single piece of evidence, a copy of the birth certificates of my 7 daughters, all dated on the same day he knew Liam had left the country with Isabel. The implication was clear and devastating. NTHE seed was planted. Arthur Kensington didn't pull his funding immediately. Men like him don't make rash moves. But the trust was broken. He began his own quiet investigation. NMY's next move was to use the world he and Isabel now occupied. I fed anonymous tips to gossip columnists and financial bloggers in the city where they lived. The tips were small, unverifiable whispers at first. Sources say the new power couple's timeline isn't quite what it seems. Whispers of a secret family left behind. I included just enough detail to be tantalizing, to make reporters start digging. NMY's most effective weapon, however, was my art. I began a new series of paintings. On the surface, they were beautiful, haunting portraits of a mother and her 7 daughters. But woven into the details were symbols of betrayal. A man's shadow walking out a door, a cold, discarded wedding ring in the corner of a canvas, a beautiful, dark-haired woman reflected faintly in a window pane. NTHE series, titled The Inheritance, gained critical acclaim for its raw emotional power. I was interviewed by art journals. When they asked about the inspiration, I spoke vaguely but powerfully about the profound strength of a woman left to build a world on her own, and the ghosts of broken promises. I never mentioned his name. I didn't have to. The story was so compelling, so specific, that people in our old social circles began to connect the dots. The whispers grew louder. NTHE campaign was working. Liam's carefully constructed world was beginning to fracture from the inside out. He was a man obsessed with control, and I had unleashed something he couldn't control, the truth. And the implosion NTHE tipping point came a year after he left. Liam and Isabel were on the verge of closing the biggest deal of their careers. a merger that would make them billionaires. The deal was being financed by a consortium led by none other than Arthur Kensington. The final contracts were to be signed at a lavish gala in London. This was the moment I had been waiting for. NTHE, night of the gala, I executed the final phase of my plan. My private investigator delivered my complete dossier to Arthur Kensington's hotel suite just hours before the event. It contained everything: the financial evidence, the timeline of the affair, and a professional photograph of me on the steps of the hospital the day after he left, holding two of my daughters, my face pale and grief-stricken. Simultaneously, a major, respected international news outlet, tipped off by one of my father's contacts, published an explosive exposé. The headline was brutal: "The Empire Built on a Lie, How CEO Liam Thorne Abandoned His Wife and 7 Newborns for His Business Partner." The article included excerpts from my dossier, quotes from unnamed but impeccable sources, and the heart-wrenching hospital photograph. It went viral instantly, and at the gala in London, as Liam and Isabel were schmoozing, basking in the glow of their impending triumph, the phones started buzzing. A wave of shock and disgust washed over the room. Investors, colleagues, and rivals looked from their screens to the smiling couple, their expressions shifting from admiration to contempt. Arthur Kensington, who had just read my dossier, walked directly up to Liam. He didn't say a word. He simply turned his back on him and walked away. It was a signal. The deal was dead. NTHE implosion was immediate and catastrophic. Investors pulled out in a panic. The board of their new company called an emergency meeting and demanded their resignations, citing the morality clause in their contracts. The scandal was too toxic. Their reputations were not just tarnished, they were annihilated. The power couple had become a punchline, a cautionary tale of greed and hubris. I watched the news unfold from my quiet living room, my 7 daughters sleeping peacefully upstairs. I felt no joy, no triumph, just a quiet, profound sense of justice. He had tried to erase us, to treat us as a footnote in his life story. Instead, I had become his legacy. I had taken the one thing he truly loved, his empire, and shattered it, using nothing but the truth he had tried to bury. In the masterpiece and in the aftermath, Liam and Isabel turned on each other. Their relationship, built on ambition and deceit, couldn't survive the pressure of failure. They lost everything: the company, the fortune, the social standing. Last I heard, they had separated, 2 disgraced figures swallowed by the scandal they had created. Liam tried to reach out once, through a lawyer offering a pathetic, self-serving apology. I sent no reply. NMY life and the lives of my daughters moved forward. I never accepted the trust fund money. I didn't need it. My art career flourished beyond my wildest dreams. The Inheritance series was purchased by a national museum. The story behind it gave my work a power and a platform I had never imagined. I used my success to build a life for my girls, a life filled with love, security, and integrity, all the things their father had discarded. Our house is the big, chaotic, wonderful home he once promised me. It's filled with my paintings, with the sound of my daughters, laughter, with the warmth of a real family. My parents are a constant, loving presence. We are a fortress built by women, held together by loyalty and love. NMY 7 girls are growing up smart, kind, and strong. They know their story. I will never lie to them. They know they were born of a great love, even if it was only on my side. And they know they were the catalyst for their mother discovering a strength she never knew she had. Sometimes, when I look at them, I see a flicker of him in a smile or the shape of an eye, and for a fleeting moment, my wedding ring feels cold again. But then one of them will run to me, her arms wrapping around my neck, and the feeling vanishes, replaced by the overwhelming warmth of the life I have built. NLIAM wanted to build an empire of steel and glass. He wanted a masterpiece of a life. In the end, I'm the one who got it. My 7 daughters, they are my empire. They are my inheritance. They are my masterpiece. And that is a legacy no man can ever take away.